All right, let's jump right into obviously the big topic of the week. Should we just abandon
we leave Canada?
Should we abandon our Canadian roots, make the long trek
20 minutes?
36 minutes to the southern border and join one of our former colleagues down in Americaville?
Former colleagues?
Yeah. John moved down there.
Oh, I thought you were talking about John.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, he's former colleague.
Yeah, no, he still works here.
Yeah.
I mean, well, not here, but here, you know.
Yeah, the greater here.
Let's talk about why this is even a topic of conversation. Bill C-11 has been passed into Canadian law as the Online Streaming Act after 2.5 years of debate. Debate that I actually did get involved in at one point, back when it was known as C-10, making my way all the way to the assistant deputy minister. No, I think it was the deputy minister of, whoever was actually working on this. I can't remember. It's actually been quite a while. I remember being on the set of one of our early car videos, might have been the Model Y video or something like that. And I had this call on the racetrack with this like deputy minister or whatever. And it became very clear to me at that time that this won't be a surprise to anyone, but it became very clear to me that the whole thing was political, had nothing to do with actually, protecting creators, or, however they were trying to sell it. And at the end of the day was about, figuring out a way to extract money from online streaming platforms and then, as far as I could tell, waste it. I have a lot of thoughts based on my experience, both with Canadian production services tax credits, as well as just generally interfacing with the government of Canada. And as far as I can tell, most of the funding exists only for entities that are so large and well established that they can afford both the time and money to cut through the bureaucracy, and therefore don't need it.
It's a lot of work. The companies that I know that capture it very effectively have dedicated employees that are there to capture it.
Yeah, which is like, oh man, not the point.
Yeah.
Anywho, let's go back to the talking points, shall we? Originally known as Bill C-10, the act allows the Canadian government to impose regulations on streaming platforms like Netflix and Spotify, as well as social platforms like YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok through the Canadian Radio, Television, and Telecommunications Commission, or the CRTC. Proponents say, so these would be supporters, that C-11 simply brings online platforms under the same kind of rules that have applied to traditional broadcasters for decades, requiring them to promote Canadian content and contribute financially to Canadian content production. But critics, including many Canadian content creators like Renee Ritchie, Some Ordinary Gamers, Call Me Chris, and JJ McCullough, are worried that the law could affect content that's made by influencers/content creators, like independent creators, since the act will likely force platforms to change their recommendation algorithms to serve Canadian users more CanCon or Canadian content. And this is a very real concern, not just because of the moves the Canadian government is making, but because of what I fear an entity like Google might do to retaliate. So and you know what? This is a tough one for me to approach because these are all private conversations.
Yeah.
And no one said anything to me directly because that would have been insane. But I will tell you, from conversations I have participated in, whether directly or observationally, that Google's not happy about any of this, and that if they are forced to alter the way that they serve content to Canadian viewers, they might, you never know, something might happen to the way that content from Canadian creators gets served outside of Canada.
Yeah, like it sounds all neat for Canadian creators when you hear what Canada wants. But when you think about how anybody's going to react to it, your algorithmic priority outside of Canada is going to be damaged because of your algorithmic priority inside of Canada.
Potentially.
I'd say I have been in none of these conversations. So I would say probably, but I have no idea.
Well, see, the thing is, even if Google decided, you know what? Forget it. I mean, what's the point of being petty and spiteful here? If LTT's viewership is 6% within Canada, why would we want this to have any impact on their ability for their content to propagate outside of Canada? Why are we depriving other users of this content? That's ridiculous. But hold on a second. If the Canadian government passes this law, which they now have, and decides to actually do something with it, which at this point is still very unclear, actually. Well, they probably won't be the last.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm Turkey or Japan or anywhere, really, anywhere that's more of I shouldn't have said Japan then, but anywhere that's more of a cultural importer rather than exporter, and I'm anywhere that I want to, protect my local production industry. Well, I'm looking at this going, oh, okay. So you actually can just tell big tech, no, you may not have a closed black box algorithm that just kind of recommends whatever and doesn't promote, local or at least within arbitrary geographical boundary X content. And so ultimately, the impact could end up coming for us, not because of Canada's first move on this, but because of the other dominoes that may ultimately fall over the next 2 or 5 or 10 or 25 years, or whatever that time frame ends up looking like. Let's continue here, though. The government has said, the Canadian government, to be clear, has said that the act is not meant, this is italicized, thank you, WAN show writer, to affect user-generated content. So it theoretically shouldn't affect someone like a Call Me Chris, but then, in spite of them saying that, they rejected multiple amendments that would have specified that in the law. So as it is now, it's pretty much just left to the CRTC to decide how to enforce this. And if they do ultimately go that route with it, well, that's within their power. So the law was designed to give the CRTC as broad powers as they were able to get pushed through over the last 2.5 years. And as an independent content creator that more and more, at least according to many of you, is basically a corporate media machine, I have no idea where I fall in this. How does Linus Media Group Incorporated figure into this? Am I an independent content creator or am I a media corporation? Both?
I think
both is good.
I don't know.
Right? Okay, so let's keep moving on. One uncontroversial effect of the law could be the widening, though, of the definition of what legally constitutes Canadian content. Heritage Minister Pablo Rodriguez is reportedly likely to ask the CRTC to include content such as Pixar's Turning Red, which is an American movie, right, produced by an American company, but written by a Canadian, set in Toronto, and produced by a partially Canadian crew, and also HBO's The Handmaid's Tale, which is an American show set partially in Canada and based on books by Luke, your phone. And based on books by a Canadian author with a partially Canadian crew. Neither of those would qualify under the current CanCon rules. What's really stupid about the current CanCon rules is how difficult it is to prove it. Like, look at this, is ridiculous. What is a Canadian certification? Minimum of 75% of program expenses, blah, blah, blah. Okay, what is the points? What is the point system? Okay, so the director gives you 2 points. DP gives you 1 point. Or 2 points, depending on what kind you're talking about. But the director of photography gives you 1 point. There's some special rules. The point is, just like the single point, the government hasn't been super clear about how this is going to work because they aren't the ones making the actual rules. That's the job of the CRTC, who are going to take consultation for 30 days at least before publishing a draft. So, our discussion questions are as follows. Oh, this is fun. How will the government force platforms to finance Canadian content? I mean, that's a really interesting one because so far, if Google simply says, well, I'm not going to pay, I don't think that the Canadian government has shown any inclination to simply block Google services within the borders. So
that would be so incredibly destructive.
That would be pretty bad and pretty stupid. However, again, this is from my conversations that I've witnessed / been a part of. It is my understanding that Google intends to comply with whatever law ultimately ends up happening. So C11, they intend to comply with C11. So I guess, that's not a probable outcome. So then what will that look like? Is it potentially a good thing that we could get more? Because, okay, if they have to alter the algorithm, they have to somehow demonstrate that they're altering the algorithm. They have to be more transparent about how it works. Does that have a potential small upside here for everyone?
And the thing that I don't really understand is like, if I go to YouTube, I wonder if this is going to happen here because it's logged into a different account. It did not happen here. And I don't know if this is because I click on this content sometimes or what, but when I go on my personal YouTube, it's never at the top, but if I scroll down a little bit, there's like a what's going on in Canada section already. Like, I don't know.
I know that was one of the solutions that Google had proposed, was like a non-algorithmic solution where they occupy a certain amount of screen space.
Yeah, like that happens to my personal account for sure. It is almost always like government news. Like Trudeau's face is all over it, like over half the content, I swear. I don't get like random
Canadian, less Canadian, but okay guy. I mean, this is probably just because I'm signed in as me, so it's just all our accounts because I don't really watch a lot of YouTube.
Yeah.
All right. Well, why don't I try an incognito tab then? Not that that's necessarily going to make much difference, but...
Yeah, I've got someone in Flowplane chat saying they get the same thing in the UK. So this is definitely a thing.
Yeah, okay.
It might not be all users. It might only be users that interact with it when shown. I don't exactly know how it works. But this is a system that they already have to a certain degree.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I don't see anything here. Maybe it's just because I'm not signed in at all?
Yeah, if you're not like this one is signed into like the WAN show email thing that we set up, and I don't have it at all here. I just have it on, and I don't know that I've seen it on my work account. I just know that I've seen it on my personal account. So I'm not sure. Yeah, there's a few other people saying that they get the same thing. Someone's saying that they get the same thing in the US even. So this is definitely a thing. I don't know that everyone gets it. Someone's same in Chicago, same as the US. Another person saying they've never seen it in the US. I don't know who all has access to it, but this is definitely something that they've experimented with. And that's enough, in my opinion. Like, it would be cool if they mixed in content creators from that area instead of just like government news.
Yeah.
Because that's like right now it's just like Trudeau 7 times and then you can scroll to the right to see if there's more. But it would be cool if it was like, maybe 1 or 2, like what's happening in my country. I'm not against that. But then some other content creators spattered in would be kind of neat.
I think a local tab would be
sweet.
Would be a positive thing for the platform. Honestly, like the fact that local news is basically dead at this point between the decline of newspapers and the consolidation of local TV stations.
It makes it kind of hard to figure out what the heck's going on around you.
That's
sometimes.
A bad thing. I mean, so what? I just rely entirely on r/Vancouver.
Yeah, like that sucks.
Is that I'm not going to join a Facebook group. that is an option. Like like Yvonne's in like the
the neighborhood
group
or whatever.
The neighborhood Facebook group, and just like okay. On the one hand, I'm saying, look, more local content, definitely a good thing. On the other hand, I don't need to know that there's a raccoon in your yard.
It's like the level of granularity.
Yeah, I wish there was a bit of vetting before it hits my eyeballs.
Yeah.
Could anyone else possibly be interested in this? No? Okay, maybe not then.
So like having options like that is cool, but changing the general algorithm, like, no, I don't want that. What if I am specifically into scientific
Japanese
stuff?
culture?
Sure. Yeah.
Something.
I don't need videos on Japanese culture only from like Canadian creators.
Yeah, probably not.
Why would I care if that's what I was coming here for?
So I guess you have already really given me your thoughts then on our second discussion question, which is how do you feel about CanCon in general? Do you think Canada should attempt to protect its culture from the evil Americans? And I put that in finger quotes because in Canada there is a pretty big perception that culturally we're pretty much just like
Melting pot.
America's hat.
Yeah, we don't really have our own.
Yeah, we have a lot of, cultural imports and very few cultural exports. Like it's mostly things that people meme on. It's like, oh,
Tim Hortons was ruined.
Maple syrup
Yeah.
and hockey.
Yeah. Hey, those are pretty good.
Look,
The
maple
ones
syrup,
we got are pretty solid.
curling, all right?
Yeah.
It's not like we're complaining about the things that are uniquely Canadian.
But we are largely a culture importer for sure.
But
A lot of our like actors, actresses, musicians, stuff like that end up going down to the States and being perceived as American creators. And yeah, like if I would like like you said, a local tab,
Yeah,
or
and-
like below my main boxes, like a bar that has local content, that'd be cool. But that's it. I don't want any more than that.
And like, if you want to talk about, influences during your formative years, I guarantee you a lot more young kids in Canada watched Friends than Kim's Convenience, right? Like
Yeah.
it's,
Kim's Convenience is great though.
sure.
But like I found, it wasn't hard for me to find. I didn't go looking for. I'm sure it wasn't influenced by this because this didn't exist yet.
I think a big problem for me too is what exactly constitutes Canadian content, because even if we ignore the heavy cultural imports, like you alluded to already, Canada's such a mixing pot, at least in the urban centers, which is the vast majority of the population here, that Canadian content could be basically anything because it's defined by your citizenship. So if you have a Canadian citizenship, then okay, it's Canadian content now. But it's like, well, what even is that? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a funny thing. The whole sort of cultural pride thing is something that I observe in foreigners a lot, but not something that I can really relate to. Okay, on the subject of our friend John, who still works for us, yes, but he's based down in one of the Carolinas. I know which one. I'm just not saying which one. I have no idea how.
Don't need to narrow it down more than that.
Yeah, I don't need to narrow it down more than that.
Over there.
I think he's pretty public about where he lives, but I don't feel like checking right now. It's fine. Anyway, the point is he's over on the east in the U.S. And like, for him, it's often a source of like great pride that a particular hot sauce or whatever was
Teams.
Yeah, sports teams. I mean, sports teams, I want to sort of get to that later because sports teams, I think, are sort of universal, at least in North America. I think people form relationships with regional sports teams. But for me, the big one was, monuments or people that came from the same school. Like he would feel a sense of personal pride or a sense of personal shame when people from his post-secondary institution went on to do great things or very terrible things, right? And that's something that, I don't know, maybe it's because I don't really know anything about my own heritage that I've just never been able to relate to. I don't.
Yeah, we
get
did
it.
a really intensely bad job of this before this bill, and this bill is not going to help. Like if you were trying to foster Canadian heritage, this is not the way to do it.
And I mean, honestly, I don't think anyone thinks it will. Not really.
Yeah.
As far as I could tell, the justifications that were provided to me, and they were extremely, well articulated. But if you got even past the very, very, very skimming top skin of the surface, didn't make any sense. It's like, well, how are we going to make sure that Canadian stories get told? And I'm sitting here going, well, I don't know. You could tell Canadians to pick up a f***ing cell phone and tell their story. And if anyone wants to hear it, if it's an interesting story, then you know what's great about the internet, the way that it is right now without you mucking around with it, is that they can tell that story and anyone, be they Canadian or American or
Letterkenny and
Texan.
Shoresy are both intensely
That's
Canadian.
a joke, by the way. I know you guys haven't seceded yet.
Lone Star. Letterkenny and Shoresy are both intensely Canadian pieces of content.
Yeah.
Amazingly good. The language and stuff gets pretty intense. I could be talking to kids. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that you watch it. If you're an adult, though, it's fantastic content. And it's popular outside of Canada. And it like really displays a lot of like intensely Canadian culture. So it's great. It's made very well, and it went very far, and it's still continuing to go very far with Shoresy. It's possible. We do it. Things happen.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess for me, part of
We
my
exist.
part of my cynicism comes from how difficult it was to actually get funding as a small-time creator. So when the justification given to me is like, well, how do we fund uniquely Canadian stories? Like one of the examples given to me.
I just want to interject because
Yeah.
the way that you said it made it sound like it's no longer difficult.
Oh yeah, it's still very difficult.
Yeah, aren't we still waiting for stuff from like years ago?
Like 2019 or something like that.
Yeah,
Like pandemic was over a while ago, y'all.
yeah, like that type of funding timeline.
I mean, sorry, excuse me. Pandemic was over a while ago, eh?
Yeah, that cultural influence from the South is taken over.
Yeehaw!
We're already moving. We're out the door. We'll be there in a minute, America. But those funding timelines don't work if you're not 100% funding yourself already.
Yeah,
So like, what a failure.
yeah. And like, the example, one of the examples that was given to me of, the kind of story that could be told, because I challenged that, right? I went, well, what story? What story is not told right now? I'm like, oh, well, what about the story of an Anglophone, that means an English speaker, an Anglophone living in an all French community? I'm like,
Okay.
what about it? So tell that story, and then when nobody f***ing cares, then we can all move on with our day.
If
And
you
then if
have
someone
some
does-
way of making it funny
Yeah.
or very well written or something, which is possible,
Then you'll find success.
it'll do well.
And maybe this is just like, what's it called? Survivorship bias or something like that? Survivorship bias. Here we go. Survivorship bias is a type of sample selection bias that occurs when an individual mistakes a visible successful subgroup as the entire group. So sure, I definitely experienced survivorship bias because I did make it through the gauntlet of breaking out on social media, right? And so I'm looking at it going, well, if you keep pounding your fists at that wall long enough, eventually you could break it down. But maybe that's not true, and maybe that's not fair, and maybe that story does need to be told. But then my question, so my rebuttal to that is it really being told if you create the content, so you throw money at this thing, and then 46 people watch it?
Yeah, because like it'll show up in people's algorithms, but how these platforms work, you don't have to watch that thing.
Yes.
You would have to click on it to watch it, so it's just not going to get clicked
So they're
on.
treating this like TV, where the audience is captive to a degree. But that's not the case. You still don't have to click on things. And it comes down to that age-old philosophical debate. If a tree falls in the forest and nobody hears it, does it make a sound, right? I would make the argument that a story told in an empty room in the dark has not been told. It's just been conceived of. Like it's not... Is it a story if it's not passed along to anybody?
The empty room in the dark thing doesn't really work, but I do agree with the. you can definitely tell stories.
I was trying to paint a lonely picture.
Yeah.
There's no microphone.
It's not a sleepover.
The room is empty. It's dark. There's no lights even. Okay, because the energy could be converted to matter. It's fully empty.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't see necessarily a lot of or any value to that because like we know how brutal it is to try to get clicked on.
Yeah,
right?
I know.
So
I'm not against funding Canadian content.
Yeah.
I just don't want it funded because it's Canadian content. I want it funded because it's good. Like it's the same way, like, man, I see a lot of people, challenge me because generally speaking, I am pro societal good. I don't mind paying my taxes, right? And people will challenge me on that and go, well, yeah, but what about government waste? What about it? Yeah, it fucking sucks. Not into it, even a little. Like, I spend my life trying to make things efficient around me, and the fact that an entire sort of subclass of citizens exists to utilize my money in a way that's not efficient it's bullshit, right? Obviously. But the flip side of that is that I also do run a company now that is small or medium, depending on how you measure it. And I understand that when you scale past a certain point, bureaucracy is unavoidable. Waste is just a fact of life. And so I don't know, I'm split because I do need roads to drive on. I do need hospitals to visit. I do need an education system for my kids to participate in, right? Like there are actual greater good benefits that taxes do allow for. But yeah, that doesn't mean that I'm not mad when it gets wasted. And this is one of those cases where I look at it and I go, all right, well, I mean, you like had this money. And as far as I can tell, a lot of it gets wasted either on like as a subsidy for foreign companies. You know, like it doesn't make sense to me how much animation takes place in Canada, for example, and how few Canadian media companies there are.
Yeah.
What? Why? Why are they all just working for American companies? So it seems to me that there are systemic problems that need to be solved before you just go grab more cash from online streaming platforms and then sort of vaguely have some idea of how you're going to use it to something Canadian story, something. Like I don't know, man. Frustrated.
Yes.
Yeah, frustrated.
Yeah.
Frustrated enough to actually, pick up and leave? Honestly, no. Like
It's so incredibly difficult at this point.
So there's that, and honestly speaking, how does the old biblical thing go? Worry not about the splinter in your neighbor's eye until you've removed the 2x4 from your own, or something like that. Like if as an American you are outraged by how ridiculous this C11 thing looks, it's not perfect anywhere.
There's other stuff going on.
Is what I'm kind of trying to say. And overall, the perception that a lot of consumers of particularly American media seem to have of Canada is just simply not correct. Not even close. I often see comments about, what life must be like in the Canadian, societal hellhole. And it's a particular...
I think this is true about like basically everywhere though.
No, not really.
I don't know.
I don't see it from a lot of Europeans. And it's not that they're not talking to me. Like I read...
Oh, I see. Okay. No, what I meant is that like if you watch media or like news from a certain country, that when you show up, it's different than what you might have expected.
No, it's just that there are some types of American media, and there's some consumers of American media, certain types of American media, that seem to be under the impression that Canada is some kind of dystopian hellscape.
It's pretty chill.
And
there's things I could complain about for days, but
absolutely,
it's pretty chill overall.
Yeah. A lot of questions here. I mean, we've got Dangered Wolf asking, would you consider creating an American branch of LMG even if LMG remains based in Canada? Why would I do that? Now I get to deal with the broken-ass American tax system on top of the broken-ass Canadian tax system.
Super fun. Incredibly fun.
How about no? Sorry. In Canada, we don't have guns, so I need... How about no? By the way, we do have guns.
We do have guns, yeah.
We have a lot of guns. I don't personally, actually, but Colton does, which is why we've never actually fired him.
There was quite a few years ago, there was a point in time where the like firearms per capita in Canada was like very, very high. But it was a lot of... Yeah, I'm not even going to get into it, but yeah. We have
Float plane chat, finger knife.
I'll get you.
Hey, from within, what is it, 6 feet, 8 feet or something
Somewhere
like that?
around there.
Knife's more lethal than a gun?
Yeah.
Whatever that
Yeah.
conventional wisdom is.